Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 3 of the 1/48 scale Eduard weekend edition of the BF109E3. So as you can see, got the parts laid out here. Got all this stuff assembled up to this point last time. Got the decals in place on the instrument panels. And now we're ready to button this thing up. Now, if you watched the last episode, you'll know that I had a bit of trouble trying to decipher the instructions and how to proceed putting this together for the closed version, i.e. the cowling and stuff. Because it's a little bit different and you have to proceed a little differently. So basically what it boils down to is you don't put the mounts on the side of the motors or on the side of the motor. You can see the mount here and this support rods that connect to this. Okay, so you don't use those. Apparently, if you do, the cowling won't fit right. So you do that, and then after that's assembled, then you glue the exhaust tips onto the engine through the fuselage. So it tells you to skip ahead, and I talked about that last time. Page numbers don't match up, but basically for closed engine compartment only, what you do is you send off some of the front of the engine here, which I did there, and then you cut off these two tabs on top of what I'm calling the gun deck. I guess that's okay. Cut those off, so those are ready to go. All right, and then once you do that, you're ready to start assembling this stuff. Now, it shows the exhaust in place on the engine, so that's what I did. So now let's get down to actually test fitting all this and see how it works. All right, so this is what we're going to do here. That's upside down, so you got to be careful. All right, so this fits in here. Now you have to kind of put it in from the back like that, which makes it a little tricky when you're putting both pieces together. And then this kind of slides. Well, come on there. So what you want to make sure you do is not put the engine in upside down. Look at that. What a buffoon. All right, let's try. No, looky there. Now it fits. All right, and then you want to make sure that this is as far forward as it'll go. All right, so there's that. Now, I'm not going to glue this together right now. I'm just going to show you how this stuff fits together. So putting this side on is a little bit tricky because you have all this back here is keeping you from, kind of swinging that down to get the exhaust in there at an angle. So it takes a little bit of plastic flexi okay, see what I did there? I just kind of twisted a little bit because this is pretty flexible, so you're not going to break it unless you really twist it hard, and then boom, you're good to go. Okay, and this fits together really nicely. Okay, now what I have to determine what I'm going to do is if I'm going to glue the fuselage together with the engine in place and then insert the other parts, which could be problematic, or try and do like one side first, like glue the components on one side first, like glue this into place here where it belongs, glue this into place here where it belongs, this into place here where it belongs, and the tail assembly, and this plate that goes behind the pilot. So I kind of need to figure out if I'm going to glue all those in first or only parts of it first. So let's take a look at the individual components. This here, that's a pretty solid, positive connection. Okay, so that's good. This one here, that one's pretty good. You can kind of tell where everything's supposed to line up. So that one is not too bad. And I still need to scrape paint off where these things are going to glue together. Okay. So that's pretty good. And then this here, it fits right along the edge here, and then fits here as I demonstrated early on, showing where it fit. So that fits really well. Okay, this part here, that's actually not too bad. It's just there might be a little bit of fore and aft because it doesn't have any really locating pins or anything like that. So that one I may glue in after the fact, but we'll see. And then the tail wheel, that's pretty easy. It just fits right there. So I think that's what I'm going to do, because I think I'm going to monkey around with it a little bit is what I'm going to do. So for sure, I'm going to glue this part in first. I'm going to glue this part in here, and then that way that will be in place because it's underneath the engine. And then I'll monkey around with it a little bit more. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off the camera and I'm going to start scraping the paint off where parts need to be glued, and come back. Straight what I do whenever I scrape the paint off, especially right here where you have a nice solid point in which to rest your blade. Now, a lot of people, and I've done it too, don't have a problem gluing over paint. I prefer not to, because I feel that I can get a little bit better bond by not having paint between the parts. Now, part of the reason that there's a couple of reasons why I do that. Number one, that's the way my dad taught me how to do it. You paint stuff, you scrape paint off, so you get a nice, clean plastic to plastic bond. Okay, so that's one reason. Another reason is in one of Shepard Payne's books. If you don't know who Shepard Payne is, look him up. He was one of the early well-known awesome modelers. He used to do a lot of awesome model work for monogram, especially. That's what he's most well known for. And some really good dioramas. Some people think some of his work can be kind of dated looking, and that may be so, but it still holds its own. He did some really good work, but he was a proponent of scraping paint off. Now I marred that finisher a little bit, but it's going to be underneath this, so you're not even going to see it, so I'm not going to sweat it. It's just kind of hard to do it at this angle with the camera. Now sometimes I've even been known to tape this stuff off before I spray it. And honestly, with nice straight edges like that, it's generally a lot quicker than trying to scrape the paint off. But I didn't do it this time, so I'm paying the price now and having to scrape this paint off. But that's all I do. So I'm going to do it on both sides. Oh, I was going to tell you the third reason. First reason, Dad. Second reason, Shepherd Paint. Third reason, I just think that you get a better surface to surface. You get a better bond because there's no contamination in the glue. Now, I have nothing to base that on, other than I have had some parts fall off, but that could have been for other reasons. But I feel like it's a little bit, very little bit of extra work, and it just doesn't hurt to do it. So anyway, I'll do the other side, get it all ready to go, scrape the sides of these things, and we'll be ready to start gluing stuff together. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this part in place here. Just make sure I've just got it going the right direction. And I'm going to use a little bit of this on this particular one because of the part is inside here. Make sure it's going the right direction. And push it in place like that. All right, now I'm gonna have to let that dry for a minute. So we'll test fit some of this other stuff. Let's see. You'll notice that I test fit, and then test fit again. I'm a test fit and foo. So that looks pretty good. I might be able to put that in after the fact though. Same with the cockpit. And I really think that's what I'm going to do, because once I start gluing this stuff in, especially like this part right here, this part wouldn't be as flexible. And I don't want to take a chance of it not fitting together properly, and I can get to all my seams from underneath to do the gluing and stuff, so I'll be good there. Okay, so this is in here pretty solid, so let's go ahead and put the engine in right side up this time and make sure it's all the way forward, pressed in there like that. Then like that, make sure this still lines up properly. Oh yeah, that's splendid. Okay, so I do need to, let's see, this part needs to, yeah, there we go. So that part all fits good. So that's fitting together fine right there. Now, if I put this together, I should be able to put that in place. There, like that. So that part fits in there okay, and then this part should just drop into place. It's going to take a little bit of finagling. So that fits into place okay. So then all I'd have to do is put the rear strut in and then drop this in from the top. through the bottom with some tweezers. That would be the last thing I would do. So that looks like the plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that in place right there since it's nice and snug, and I'm going to start cementing this stuff. So I need some clamps first. So what I do when I glue a fuselage together, first of all, I test my clamp to make sure it's going to squeeze the parts together that I need. Make sure everything lines up. Because what I do is I do it in segments. So I mentioned at one point that these parts, when you glue them, if there's a break in the seam, that's where the glue is going to stop. So what I like to do is I like to glue short pieces at a time. That way I can make sure it's lined up perfectly, clamp it, all that kind of stuff, so I really minimize the need to sand stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. So first, I'll get this part up here. Let me check the engine one more time. Okay. So first, put some cement there. And cement there. I'll take this clamp, clamp it like that, make sure that is pretty level, because I really don't want to lose any of the detail. Make sure everything stayed lined up there. I don't want to lose any of the detail by having to monkey around with a bunch of seams and stuff. So that looks pretty good. Twist it just a little bit like that. All right, so that looks good. So that is nice and flat. Now if I have to sand or have to rescribe this panel line in here, let's get a shadow, there we go. That panel line, it won't be that big a deal. So that's all lined up. Now as you can see, this isn't, but all I have to do is just twist it around, get that lined up, and glue that, and do the same thing with another clamp, and just work my way down. So I'm going to do these first two parts here, and then I'll move on once those dry. So let's get a little bit of a gap going there. Now that won't be as big a deal to sand because that's a nice flat surface with no detail on it. So even if I have to sand that one a little bit, won't be that big a deal. But in testing it, it feels pretty flat. So I'm going to let that cure up for a few minutes. I'm going to put a little bit of cement here and here to hold that into place, because that was kind of loose. Okay, so I'm going to let that cure up for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, let's take a look at what we've got here. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to have to actually let that dry for probably a day for that glue to really get that plastic that's oozed out to really firm up. But that can't stop us from going on with the rest of this. So, whoops. Well, let's push that all the way through there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cement this part into place. Put the cement right there. And there. And then there. And there. And that'll hold that firewall slash gun deck into place really good. That one I shouldn't have to hold for too long. Fit on this kit really is good. I'm a digging it. All right, so now let's see. I think perhaps what I'll do next is start gluing this back here. Okay, so the first thing I need to do though is I need to get this tail wheel positioned here, and I've got enough flex here that I can get it placed right there. So and it's tight enough that I'm not going to even bother gluing it, because I don't want to have to deal with I'd have to do super glue in order to get it to get into position right. Okay, so because see, it's going to be tricky to get it lined up, but I don't like just gluing one side, because if it's cockeyed a little bit, it's not gonna fit like it should. There it goes. Okay, you'll feel it clicking up into place. So we're good there. So now what I need to do is glue this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the back here so I can keep the wheel from moving, and work my way up this way. And I'll be using the panel lines to keep it lined up. And then as I clamp it, I'll make sure that it's, you know, not too twisty to where one side is higher than the other. There we go. Okay. So we'll just squeeze that together, twist it, and make sure that it's lined up. Now, I'm going to have to, on the top especially, I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful about making sure that I don't fill that channel up too much, because there's supposed to be, as I mentioned earlier, a seam line down the middle of this aircraft, and I don't want to, I may have to rescribe it, as a matter of fact. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And honestly, in this scale, it's not as big a deal to make sure you can see that, but you do want to kind of make sure that it looks right. Okay, so that's lined up really good. So that one I'm going to let sit for a little bit and dry, and then we'll come back and we'll work on the spine a little bit. All right, so here's what we got so far. Looking pretty good. So the next thing we'll do is glue this part here. Glue the rudder, or the vertical stabilizer. Okay, so we'll continue on in the back. So we got that, so let's squish that one together. Whoops. Okay, that looks nice and even, so we'll let that sit for a sec. All right, let's take a look here and see what we got. All right, so that's looking good. So now let's do tail. Let's just go ahead and do the whole shooting match. What I'm doing is I'm holding it apart so this cement can get down in there, and then I'm slowly releasing it as I go to keep the seam really small, so it'll pull through. All right, so there we go. So, man, I mean, I even have to clamp this. Sorry for the sniffles, guys. I've got some serious allergies hitting me. Just trimming a tree, and you know, just got all snot-nosed. Now, one thing I was going to bring up, using these type of clamps, it's real easy to keep things aligned, because when you clamp your surface, you can either go full on sideways, you can twist it just a little bit, and by putting pressure on the opposite sides, it can push one side down and kind of raise one side up if need be. It's really effective on a larger scale aircraft, you know, like 132nd. You can really do some good lineup work. So that's looking pretty good right there. I didn't even have to clamp that. Did have to clamp the top of that though. I'm going to clamp this here. I'm going to add a little bit more cement right in here. And those little pads that you see on here, they're just like the little rubber pads that you can put on the bottom of something like a decorative thing or a dish or something like that. You don't want scuff or scar, like a wooden tabletop or something. You just buy them at hardware stores or whatever. They come in little circles, and I just cut them off and glue them into place. That way you get some really good grip, and it doesn't scuff or scratch the plastic. Okay, you can probably see right here some molten plastic. So that means we got the cement down in there really well, and here too. So we'll just once I get all this together and it's cured good, then we can sand it, scrape it and sand it. So that looks pretty good. What I'm doing with dragging my fingernail across here is to make sure one side's not stepped up higher than the other. I'm just feeling that molten plastic. Go to a place where the plastic isn't as pronounced, and we're good. Oh man, yeah, these things fit together really well. Other than that little gaff with the instructions for doing the engine. This thing has gone together really well so far. Okay, see, that fits in there really good. Now I am going to have to do some touch-up painting on this stuff, but I'll be doing that a little bit later once we get closer to doing the final paint stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that piece in right there. I like the way that is fitting on there. That's awesome. So make sure I'm not touching any of the seams with my finger, because that could cause some trouble. All right, so we'll sorry, you can't see down inside there very well, but so we got that in place quite nicely. Okay, I'm going to clamp that and let that doesn't take a lot of pressure, so I'm going to let that cure up. All right, I'm back. So while I was letting this dry, I thought, you know, I could use a cup of tea. No, I'm not British, but I like my tea in the evenings instead of coffee. So I thought, I'm going to have some. So I go in, get my cup going, let the tea bag steep for a while, and had a little mishap. Tea was all ready to go. Got the bag out. Got my honey. So I like honey in my tea, or what I thought was honey, and upended it. Guess what? It was maple syrup. It doesn't come out slow like honey does. So I sent tea and maple syrup splashing out of the cup all over the counter. So had to start over. So anyway, I thought you might find that a little amusing. Hope you did. I did. So did my son and my future daughter-in-law. They found it to be quite amusing. So I'll scrape a little bit of paint off here so we get a nice solid connection. Again, is this necessary? Maybe not. But I like to do this. Get that scraped off. So if you hear chuckling and laughing maniacally in the back here, it's my wife cracking up at my little mishap with the maple syrup. So she loves me, thank goodness. All right, so this is going together nicely. I'm digging it. It is working well. All these parts are fitting in there really good. Oh man, fitting really well. Okay, so I'm going to glue these like this, and that will be pretty much it for the fuselage. So let's, got that there. If you see me moving my brush off screen, it's because I like to, if there's any paint present, I like to rub it off on a paper towel. So I don't like to contaminate. I don't like whenever my cement gets cloudy. It may be weird, but hey, that's me. Okay. And boom. All right, so we'll let that cure up for a minute. Now, I probably don't need to clamp this, but I'm going to anyway, just because I want it to be nice and tight on there, like that. So that is done. So let's see what we have next. So that was page 4 with the engine. So we want to move on to, let's try and find page 5 in this convoluted thing. Alrighty then, there's 5. So 5, obviously we're not using because this is all with the closed or open up thing. So now we're on to 6, page 6, which is starting on the wings and gear bays. All that kind of jolly stuff. So let me get this stuff situated here, and we'll move on to that step. Okay, so before we move on to the wings and stuff, though, I want to take care of some of this yeah, it's still a little soft. It's not quite cured up enough. I may have to wait till tomorrow to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside and we'll start with the wings. So we need to cut all these wing parts off. So we've got C3, 2 D17s, C2, C1, D52 and 51, which are the slats. And then we need D1 and D2, which are the wheel well walls, I guess you'd call it. So let me go ahead and start cutting all these parts off, and we'll get this ready to go. I'll get everything cut off, cleaned up, and then we can start gluing it together. All right, I got these parts cleaned up. So here's what we got to do first. Gotta glue these here wheel wells, landing gear bays, whatever you want to call them. We got to glue those in place first. There's some ribs there with these like rivet detail that lines up with these notches and the inside of the curvature like that. So let's throw down with some cement on there like that, and then some like that. Kind of squish it in place, make sure it's all nice and snugly in there. thusly. Then we'll do the same thing over here. You know what? I'm also going to put some cement right there along the edge of where the landing gear actually attaches. Make sure that's all looking dandy. Okay, we're good there. And there. And there. Okay, so that's all looking spiff. Those are drying. We'll put the guns in place here. I'll find my handy dandy tweezers. Oops. Okay. And they fit right there like that. So what I want to do here is make sure it's spaced evenly on both sides. Make sure it looks, yeah, so that, once we get that, that looks pretty good. What a person could do is just set those in place, leave them free floating until you got the wing parts together, and then actually glue those, but I don't think that's necessary. So let's get this gun. Oop. So that looks pretty lined up. So next part we need to do is put the top and bottom wing halves on here. So these fit just like that, and they fit pretty well, fit pretty good there. You want to make sure these are lined up, all your panel lines are lined up. That's the most crucial part. And this back here can be glued after the fact. So just like I do with run cement all down those seams like that. And make sure that is lined up. Fits on there pretty, it's a pretty positive fit, but you can minimize the cleanup that's going to have to be done later just by making sure that is lined up. As close as possible. And with the cement, or with the plastic soft, you got some wiggle room. Like that. Okay, so that's in place. So I'm going to let that set up a little bit before I get this stuff here, because we need to get some glue down in there so that's all sealed up. All right, so next we'll start gluing up this wing here, just like we did the other one. Right down all these seam. Oh, look at that. That's perfect. All right, so let's squeeze that together. Again, focusing on this part here, making sure that it's lined up as closely as possible. And that looks really good. So I'm going to let that set up for a minute. Then we'll come back and glue under the wheel wells. All right, so let's glue this right here. I already did the other one, as you can see by that little smudge right there. Yes, I am a nitwit, and I freely admit it. But I can fix it. Okay, those are glued on. Now, the other part it says to cut out are the slats. However, and those go here. But I am not going to glue those into place. And the reason I'm not going to glue them into place is because the inside here needs to be painted a different color than this out here. If I'm not mistaken, and I'll check my references, but I think the inside there is painted like an RLM 2 all the way across. So what I will do is I will paint that, and then I'll paint the wings and the slats and all that kind of stuff with the appropriate camouflage, and then I will place these on here like that. Okay, so that's the plan. So these will be painted separately from these. So now, before I start attaching flaps and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to check the fit of this. So that needs just a tiny bit of sanding where it was cut from the sprue. May take a little bit of knife action there. Okay, so now let's try the fit. And that fits nicely. Now, if I am not mistaken, oh, you know what? I need to clean these up a little bit right here. Got a little bit of flash going on there. There. And there. So a little bit more there. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that fits really good in there. And those are along natural seam lines, so I don't have to do any filling underneath there. I just need to make sure that I glue it well and make sure that it's all, you know, the seam is nice and solid. So the underside looks really good. So let's flip it over and see how we look. Now, there you go. Look at that. Wing roots. That is championship stuff. So whenever I get this all clamped together here to glue it, let me see if I can do it where you can see what I'm doing. Let's try it this way. Since this pad's bigger down there, that's going to look really good. Might even be able to do it. Yeah, that's even better there. Clamp that baby in there tight like that. And again, these are falling on where it should, so we're not going to have to do any wing root filling. And that is a good example of the difference between a kit from nowadays and a kit from the old days. As a matter of fact, if I sand down the bottom of this part right here, I may not need to even clamp it, because I think that might be where it's hanging up. Yeah, so that's going to look real good. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to glue the wing onto the fuselage first before I put these other small parts on the bottom. The radiator covers and the flaps and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then once I get this part here glued, then what I'll do is I'll line up the wing roots in the back here and get those glued into place. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to glue this stuff in the back first. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a gap. Like that. There. There. And there. And then push it into place. Like that. That is what you call spectacular. All right. Very good. And then I'm going to put a little bit here. And here. Now, we'll let that cure up.